Chapter 1. The Last Flight. Philip Carter's fingers trembled over the control panel as the alarms blared through the cockpit. Red warning lights flashed, casting eerie shadows over Marcus's determined face as he strapped himself into the co-pilot seat. They were being hunted. USF destroyer is closing fast, Marcus said, his deep voice tight with urgency. They must have picked up our launch trail. Philip swallowed the lump in his throat, gripping the controls with white-knuckled intensity. Then we outrun them. Outside the viewport, the vast blackness of space stretched infinitely, broken only by the cold, metallic glint of the destroyer in relentless pursuit. The United Space Force wasn't just trying to capture them, it was trying to erase them, because they were criminals, because they were fugitives, because they were in love. Philip's jaw clenched, a steely resolve replacing his fear. They weren't going back, not to Earth, not to the world that had declared their very existence a threat. They had risked everything for this, stolen a ship, plotted a course, and left behind a planet that had never truly been their home. The ship's thrusters fired, rattling the cockpit violently as the horizon breaker roared to life. A symphony of mechanical sounds filled the cabin, whirring gears, hissing hydraulics, and the deep, throbbing hum of the engine. Evasive maneuvers, Marcus suggested, his voice steady despite the tension. We need to shake them off our tail. Philip nodded, his eyes flicking over the controls. Hold on tight. The horizon breaker banked sharply to the left, stars blurring into streaks of light as they sped away. The destroyer followed, unwavering in its deadly pursuit. Philip's hands moved with practiced precision, executing complex maneuvers to evade their pursuers. Sweat trickled down his forehead, the pressure of the situation weighing heavily on him. He glanced at Marcus, whose unwavering presence provided a small measure of comfort. They had come too far to be caught now. Almost there, Philip muttered, his eyes locked on the navigation screen. We just need to. A sudden jolt rocked the ship as a laser blast grazed their hull. Warning alarms screamed in protest, the cockpit shaking violently. Philip remained focused, every fiber of his being dedicated to their escape. The coordinates for their jump to hyperspace were locked in. One final maneuver, and they'd be free. Hang on, Philip shouted, pulling back on the controls. The horizon breaker shot forward, stars stretching into blinding lines as the ship made the jump to hyperspace. One chance, one escape, one final fight for freedom. And Philip wasn't about to lose. Chapter 2. Lovers in the Void. The ship rattled violently as the destroyer's ion cannons fired, a plasma burst skimming past their hull. Sparks rained down from an overhead panel, casting an eerie glow in the dimly lit cockpit. Philip could hear the agonizing groans of the horizon breaker as it struggled to hold together. Shields at 40%. Marcus shouted, gripping the sides of his seat with knuckles white from strain. Philip cursed under his breath, his heart pounding in his chest. The horizon breaker wasn't built for combat. It was a stolen scouting vessel, stripped of weapons, meant for quiet planetary surveys, not outrunning a warship. They were on the edge of destruction, and every second counted. Another blast rocked them, sending shudders through the entire ship. Marcus reached over, grabbing Philip's arm with a grip that conveyed both urgency and unspoken fear. We need to jump now, he urged, his eyes wide with a mixture of determination and desperation. Philip's gaze flicked to the NAV system, Eden 12. Their last hope. The coordinates were just within reach, but the USF destroyer was closing in fast. Hold on, Philip warned, his voice a strained whisper. He yanked the ship into a sharp dive, narrowly dodging another ion blast that blazed past their hull. The ship groaned in protest, the metal creaking under the strain, but Philip ignored it, his fingers flying across the controls with a frantic urgency. The warp drive initiated with a high-pitched whine, a sound that filled the cockpit with both hope and dread. The USF destroyer loomed closer, its presence an ominous shadow that threatened to consume them. Philip's breath came in short, ragged gasps as he fought to keep the ship steady. Too late. Marcus grabbed Philip's hand, their fingers intertwining in a grip that spoke volumes. Their eyes met, just for a second filled with silent promises, desperate prayers. and a love that defied the odds. With a violent lurch, space folded around them, and the horizon breaker shot forward into the void. One chance, one escape, one final fight for freedom, and Philip wasn't about to lose. Chapter 3, A World of Their Own. The horizon breaker burst from the wormhole, space snapping back into place around them. The violent shaking ceased, and the alarms fell silent, leaving an almost eerie quiet in their wake. For the first time in hours, there was only the sound of their own breathing. Philip exhaled deeply, running a shaky hand through his short blonde hair, his heart still pounding. He turned to Marcus, whose chest rose and fell rapidly. Their hands were still clasped. Neither had let go through the chaos. "We made it," Marcus whispered, his voice tinged with disbelief and relief as he stared out the viewport. Ahead of them stretched Eden 12, a world unlike any they had ever seen. Unlike Earth, with its sprawling cities and poisoned skies, this planet was untouched. Verdant green continents stretched across endless oceans, clouds swirling lazily in the atmosphere. It was beautiful, untamed, free. Philip swallowed hard. The weight of their journey and the danger they had escaped finally settling in. They had escaped the USF for now, but safety was still a fragile, fleeting hope. If the government sent patrols to survey the planet, they could be found, and their new haven could quickly turn into a trap. "We can't land in the open," Philip said, engaging the cloaking system with practiced precision. "We'll set down near the mountains. We need cover." Marcus nodded, his dark eyes locked on the new world below. A fresh start, a place where they wouldn't have to hide, where they could finally live without fear. It felt almost too good to be true. As the horizon breaker descended, the majestic landscape of Eden 12 came into clearer view. Towering mountains rose from lush valleys, rivers wound their way through forests, and wildlife roamed freely. It was a paradise they had only dreamed of, but as Philip guided the ship into a stealthy descent, he couldn't shake the feeling that their fight wasn't over yet. The shadows of their past loomed large, and the specter of danger was ever present. They had won this battle, but the war for their freedom and love was far from over. Their hands remained intertwined, a silent promise to face whatever came next together. As the ship touched down in the secluded mountains, they prepared to carve out a life on this new world, a world of their own. One chance, one escape, one final fight for freedom, and Philip wasn't about to lose. Chapter 4, Forbidden Desire. The horizon breaker settled onto the surface of Eden 12, its landing gear hissing as it touched solid ground. The jungle stretched in all directions, thick and humid, the air rich with the scent of vegetation. The ship's engines powered down, leaving an almost deafening silence in their wake. Philip unbuckled his harness, turning to Marcus. "We should scout the area before he could finish, Marcus surged forward, crashing their mouths together with a fervor that took Philip's breath away. Philip gasped, but his body responded instantly, wrapping around Marcus, fingers gripping the back of his shirt with a desperate need. They had spent years hiding, years fearing every touch, every glance, every whisper. Now there was no one watching, no laws, no judgment. Philip's back hit the control panel as Marcus deepened the kiss, hands sliding beneath his shirt, tracing the curves of his body with a touch that sent shivers down his spine. Heat coiled between them, their breaths heavy and desperate, mingling in the confined space of the cockpit. Philip pulled away just long enough to meet Marcus's gaze. His brown skin glowed in the dim cockpit lights, his lips swollen from their kiss. "You realize we're finally free, right?" Philip whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. Marcus's fingers tightened on Philip's waist, his eyes burning with intensity. "Then let's act like it," he replied, his voice a low, husky murmur. Their bodies tangled together, urgency giving way to something deeper, something raw and unrestrained. They moved as if making up for lost time, for stolen moments they had never been allowed to have. Every touch, every kiss, every caress was a declaration of their love and defiance. Here, in the heart of the universe, they weren't fugitives. They weren't criminals. They were just two men in love, free to express their desire without fear. And for the first time in their lives, that was enough. Chapter 5. The Shadows of Earth. Philip lay on the floor of the cockpit. Marcus curled against him, their skin damp, their breathing steady. The ship hummed softly around them, a lullaby of technology against the wild silence of the planet outside. For a moment, they allowed themselves to believe they were safe. Then, a faint beeping from the console shattered the tranquility. Marcus sat up first, his body tense. Philip pulled himself up, dread pooling in his stomach as he checked the radar. A red blip blinked steadily, moving toward their coordinates. His heart sank. "No," he whispered, the word barely audible. Marcus's jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing with resolve. They found us. Philip's mind raced, a whirlwind of fear and determination. The USF must have tracked their jump signature. Maybe they had tagged the horizon breaker before they escaped. It didn't matter how. They were coming. "We have two choices," Philip said, turning to Marcus, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "We run or we fight." Marcus's dark eyes burned with determination, a fire that mirrored Philip's own resolve. "I'm done running." Philip nodded, a fierce sense of solidarity surging between them. So was he. They had risked everything for this new life, for the chance to be together without fear. And they weren't about to lose it. The ship's systems hummed around them, a reminder of the technology that had brought them this far. Philip's fingers flew over the controls, preparing for whatever came next. They had faced impossible odds before, and they would do it again. As the red blip on the radar grew closer, Philip and Marcus shared a final, determined glance. They were ready to fight for their freedom, for their love, for the life they had built together. To be continued. Thank you for joining us today as we watched the first episode of Forbidden Horizon. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episode. Please ring that bell, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up.